Ultimate Frisbee is self-officiated, which means players are supposed to know the rules. But let's be real, a lot of players, they're not reading all this. So I'm gonna break down just a few of these to help increase some Frisbee knowledge. And you know I gotta start with the classic, let's talk about picks. So just to set the stage a little bit, number 14 on white is the one that calls pick in this clip, so let me play it through. Alright, so we're gonna see a little bit of give and go here with Pittsburgh. A little bit of a floaty throw, so 14 tries to make a play on it. Doesn't work out, so he tries to go back, runs it to his teammate, and then calls the pick. For the most part, players understand the basic of what a pick is. Like, this ain't basketball. You can't just set up a screen for your teammates. So it's Rule 17J, and honestly, you only need the first sentence to really know what's really going on. Pick occurs whenever an offensive player moves in a manner that causes a defensive player guarding an offensive player to be obstructed by another player. I don't know many times I said player there, but it's a lot, but let's dive into it a bit more. In this sentence, the biggest word to pay attention to is the word guarding. A lot of people don't know that this has a definition in itself in the game of Ultimate. It's actually called out here in 3E that guarding has two stipulations. You have to be both within 10 feet of an offensive player and reacting to them. Basically, if those two things aren't being met, you should not be calling the pick, even if you do get obstructed. So 14, he tries to make a play here. He gets pulled away from his guy. It doesn't work out. Obviously, right here, he's not even reacting, but he's not picked yet, so it's okay. He tries to go back to his initial matchup, and then as he's going back, this is where the big collision occurs, right about here. Now, in my opinion, if I just pause it, it looks like he got pulled away from 10 feet. This really should not have been even called a pick for that reason alone. All right, let's just give my boy the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say it was a bad camera angle. Let's say he was within 10 feet and it was a legit pick. So what happens next? I honestly think the first thing players should be doing is just asking themselves that, hey, did this foul, in this case a pick, affect the play? If you don't really know what affected the play means, 17C5 kind of lays it out here. But essentially it's just saying if you believe that if you got fouled and if that foul did not happen, if that would have changed the outcome of the play, and there you go. And this honestly gets overlooked a ton just because sometimes people think like once a pick is called that the disc automatically goes back. That is not always the case. But if we go back up to 17C4, that talks about calls made by the defense. And then part A is specifically talking about when the pass is completed, what happens. But let's replace the word infraction with the word pick to kind of get a better and clear understanding. So A1 reads, if the pick affected the play stops and the disc reverts to the thrower. So in our specific clip here, the player who did call it, he definitely believed that the pick affected his play. So the disc eventually did go back. Or if we get into A2, it says, if the pick did not affect the play stops and the result of the play stands. A great example of showing the flip side of this was actually at Club Nationals this past year. Alex Davis was streaking deep, hammer gets thrown, his defender calls pick, but he still cashes the goal. And like we've already mentioned, I am not a fan of this pick call because look at the distance here. My boy got cooked. He's way more than 10 feet. But this shows the great thing about our sport because after talking out a bit, the defender realized that this did not affect the play and retracted the call. But believe it or not, I still have one last thing to say about picks. So for all calls, there are general rules for players on the field to follow on where to go back to further down in 17C. So pause it here if you want to. But on top of this, the players involved in the pick actually have some extra positioning guidelines to follow. So a bit further down in the same pick section, it says, in addition, the obstructed player is then allowed to move to recover the relative position loss because of the pick. And even in the finer print right next to it, it literally gives you an example. If they were trailing by 9 feet, then they get to catch back up to 9 feet. And then right after that, but does not get to set up right next to the offensive player. But if we go back to the clip, what do we see? We see just that. They set up right next to each other. When if we go backwards, he was nowhere near that close. Now, if you thought this was a rant, just wait until we get to this rule later. Before I get into that one, let me talk about this rule I found out from College Nationals last year. This happened to be from the women's Callahan winner from last year, Jolie Krebs. She was doing a handler movement with her teammate. It slips out of her hand mid-throw, and then she taps it right to her in order for her to get the catch. Now, when I saw this, I was more amazed more than anything. The opposing defense was actually looking at the observers like, this gotta be illegal. So it seems like after a bit of discussion, everybody agreed that this was a travel, but I went to go look at the rules to go figure it out for myself. I eventually landed on 16A, which talks about tipping to oneself is actually considered traveling, but if you look at the finer print next to it, it says tipping brushing to someone else is legal, and on the second sentence right there, it says it is legal to tip/brush your own throw. But next time you have a floaty throw, remember you can do that. Now for this next one, I suggest you use a little bit of discretion because it can be considered petty. You're going to see that one player picks up the disc when it is out of bounds and then sets it down on the ground. That is technically a turnover if the other team did call it, but I think they might have missed it. I even did a Reddit post on this exact clip just to make sure I wasn't crazy, and a lot of people did agree with me. 13.B reads, if the thrower accidentally drops a live disc or a disc in play without defensive interference and it contacts the ground before the thrower regains possession, it is considered a turnover. I even tried calling this myself last summer on a team. They had no clue about this rule, and I kind of just let it slide, but I did prove it to them right after the game. Remember, this can feel kind of cheap, so I wouldn't advise actually pulling this out at like your local pickup or a less competitive league. Now for this fourth rule, is honestly just to help out offensive players with their IQ a bit when a disc is actually going out of bounds. So let's just say 7 on greens making a deep cut, so one's trying to hit him on the outside in, try to deep shot, but it never comes back in and lands right about there. Most teams understand they're probably telling number 7 on defense here, hey, don't touch it, it's not coming back in. And they do this because they're worried about the field position they're going to get once they gain possession. This is all called out in Rule 10H of where to continue play once the disc goes out of bounds. It reads, a member of the team gaining possession of the disc must carry it to and put it into play at the spot in the central zone nearest to where the most recent of the following events occurred. The specific rule that we're talking about when it comes to defense is 10H3, where it talks about the disc contacting a defensive player. So let's just say number 7 does touch the disc. He thinks that the offensive player is going to be able to do like a gradish or something like toe tap it in order to make a play. So once again, instead of getting the disc way down here, since they touched it, like when it was out of bounds, let's just say number 7 touched it on this line here. They're just going to bring it in closer to the central zone, literally on this sideline. And you can see how big of a difference that makes. So like I said before, a lot of people understand this from a defensive side of things, but this same mentality can be applied to the offense as well. Because one of those same points that we mentioned before about the defense mentions the offense as well when the disc contacts an inbound player. So if they want this disc to be on the sideline after they turn it over, if they want it to be right here, that means they at least have to toe tap it right here, looking like Julio Jones. And this exact situation happened to my team, and you're seeing it right now. Or they're gonna have to jump from inbounds and touch the disc like in mid-air, mid-flight, without touching the ground in order for this to come back on the sideline right here. So basically all I'm saying is, as an offensive player, just always go for the greatest. You have nothing to lose. Now for this last rule, it's honestly one of my biggest pet peeves because so many people do it. And it ain't even complicated. You usually see it when injuries happen. Unfortunately, a player goes down, substitute player comes on, and what do you usually see? The substitute player comes on, touches the ground with their bare hand in order to get everybody going. But no, this is not a rule. So yes, when play does stop, it is supposed to be restarted with a check. It's all called out in 9D. You can read all of them right here, but there's 3 of them. One that we see the most, and it's just most common to everybody, is when there's an offensive player with a disc in their hand, and then there's a defensive player that's close enough, and they just tap the disc, and then people get going. Now the 2 others are called self-checks, and you're about to see why. The offensive self-check is when, yes, the offensive player is there with a disc in their hand, but there is no defensive player close enough to tap it, so then they just tap the ground with the disc in their hand. Now the defensive self-check, this is the one that people actually mess up all the time. The defensive self-check is called out in 9.D.5. This is only done when there is no offensive player in possession of the disc at the appropriate spot. Honestly, it's just part C that we really have to worry about that people mess up, but it's just the defender close to the disc loudly announces 3, 2, 1, disc in. So no, it's not always a substitute player that has to do this. It kind of just all depends. But 2, and more importantly, there's no touching the ground anywhere. I actually went and messaged the GOAT Observer Mitch Dangler on Reddit just to make sure I wasn't crazy, and he did confirm what I was thinking. Now, I don't know why something so small irritates me so much. It's almost just like a big Mandela effect that everybody gets wrong. But regardless, I'm going to be the one that gets the ultimate community back on track, one rule at a time. Hey, if you stayed this long, you must be a rules nerd just like me, so go check out